Hello everyone, welcome back to Age of Nagash, which is a channel dedicated to Age of Sigmar. In today's video we're going to be looking at the battalions of the Flesh Eater Courts. Now I will say before I start that the Flesh Eater Courts battle tome where the battalions are did come out before the first General's Handbook, so some of them are quite narrative based and quite more sort of like fun ones rather than competitiveness, because when this book came out there were no points. So bear that in mind. But with that aside, let's dive into the first one. So that would be the Royal Family. Blood calls to blood, and under the bestial gaze of the abhorrent Ghoul King, his royal family gathers to unleash red ruin upon their foes, calling forth an unending tide of twisted mordant warriors. Okay, so that's the narrative behind it, and then the organisation. A royal family consists of the following units. One of the following units: abhorrent Ghoul King on Terrorgeist, or an abhorrent Ghoul King on Zombie Dragon, and then the next requirement is 2 to 6 abhorrent Ghoul Kings. So this battalion has two abilities, the first one being the Lords of the Manor. In the dominating presence of their royal masters, courtiers of every rank call forth their minions in ever greater numbers. Each time a courtier in your army uses an ability to call forth additional Flesh Eater Courts models, add one additional model to one eligible unit if the courtier is within 10 inches of a royal family model when the ability is used. So this ability seems to be alright, pretty good. However, as this battalion is more one of the sort of narrative based ones, the ability to be able to bring back an extra model with those courtiers is good. However, as the battalion costs 110 points by itself, and then to run it the cheapest you can, including the points of the battalion, you're looking at 750 points, because you need a abhorrent Ghoul King on Terrorgeist for the cheapest option, and then 2 abhorrent Ghoul Kings comes to 240 points. So in total 750 just for this battalion alone, and really don't feel like it adds that much more to the army, to be honest. I mean, when I first read this, I thought, after points came out and I was looking through it, I thought being able to add an extra model with your courtiers, you have a lot of courtiers, that can be good. But for the cost of this, I'd just rather have additional courtiers, to be honest. Yeah, just because you're just going to bring back more models with them. Although Lords of the Manor Battalion is good because of just how expensive this is going to be to be able to put on the table. I just think you're better off taking courtiers. However, there is another ability, and it's a command ability. So we'll look at this now. So, summon Sippocant. If your general was chosen from this battalion and your royal family currently has fewer than 6 abhorrent Ghoul King models, your general can use this command ability instead of any others he can usually use. If he does so, set up a new abhorrent Ghoul King within 3 inches of any edge of the battlefield and more than 9 inches from enemy models. It cannot move in the subsequent movement phase, and it counts as part of the royal family for the rest of the battle. Okay, so firstly, being able to bring on more heroes into the game, later game, is of course not bad. However, in this battalion, the minimum, like I said, you've got to have in total is 3 abhorrent Ghoul Kings, 1 on a Terrorgeist, was on the Dragon, and the other 2 on foot. You're not really going to need other abhorrent Ghoul Kings. You're better spending the points somewhere else, because because of the rules of 1, you can only cast the abhorrent Ghoul Kings on foot. The spell that they share is the Black Hunger or Dark Hunger. You can only do that spell once, so being able to bring on additional, of these abhorrent Ghoul Kings onto the board, I just really can't see the use for it. Admittedly, they can all do different, they can do Arcane Bolt and Mystic Shield, but you've already got at least 3 wizards on the table anyway. And like 120 points is a lot of points just to bring on another abhorrent Ghoul King when you've got 3 on the table, when you could spend it, if you're taking a lot of Crypt Horrors, for example, use it on a Crypt Haunter Courtier to bring back the Crypt Horrors from that. It's a much better use of points. Or just to have more ghouls, or just to put towards something else. I really don't feel like it's that useful, especially how this is a command ability. So like I say, in the Flesh Eater Courts, the best one I generally use is just Inspiring Presence. So you can't do Inspiring Presence, you have to do, well, you don't have to do, but you're paying for this command ability to bring on Ghoul Kings onto the table edge. So if you're not using it, you feel like you're not getting your points you pay for this battalion. So I personally don't like this battalion. I like the sort of fluff and the narrative behind it, how, you know, it's the royal family and, you know, they're calling for all their brothers and sisters and all their relatives to go to the battle on a heroic, you know, crusade to rid the land of evil. You know, I like that. But I think it's just, with General Handbook and points, it's not particularly useful. Before the General's Handbook, yeah, you know, it was a really good thing, but before the General's Handbook there was no points, so summoning didn't cost anything, so it had its uses then. But now, I don't see the uses for it, unfortunately. But anyway, so that's the royal family done. Now to move on to the next one, which is the attendants at court. So, favoured creatures of the court, the lick-spittles have free rein to rend and tear their foes at will. The Lord Chambersloth gives what few orders will follow, enacting the King's will. Okay, so the organisation for this one, an attendant at court battalion consists of the following units: 1 Crypt Haunter Courtier and 2 units of Cryptoids. So, on the cheapest you can do it, it's a lot cheaper than the Royal Family Battalion we just looked at. However, I would suggest, you know, you have 2 units of Cryptoids in this battalion, but I would suggest, you know, don't take 2 units of Frigg, obviously, you know, max it out to make them a lot more survivable. So let's have a look at the abilities. So, Loyal Subjects. The Cryptoids, known as the Lickspittle, are the King's most trusted subjects and can be relied upon to fight with murderous fury, even when they are far from the Master's praying gaze. You can reroll failed hit rolls for a unit of Crypt Horrors from the attendants at court, even if they are not within 15 inches of an abhorrent Ghoul King from your army. Okay, so standardly, if you're taking a lot of Crypt Horrors in your army, I always suggest, like I said in the unit video, to always have your Ghoul King nearby to keep and make him get the rerolls. However, your Ghoul King can sometimes get easily sniped off the board, so this ability here, which allows your Crypt Horrors to get rerolls for failed hit rolls anyway, is really good, even if they're not within 15 inches. So, nice constant ability there. So that is good. And then the next one is Steward to the King. As the King's chief minister at court, the Lord Chambersloth is an adept at relying and reinforcing the commands of his masters in battle. If your general is an abhorrent Ghoul King and is within 10 inches of this battalion's Crypt Haunter Courtier during your hero phase, he can use 2 command abilities that phase and can even use the same command ability twice. Okay, so this really does depend on if you're taking up, well, of course, if you're taking up on Ghoul King as your general, otherwise it has no effect. However, like I said yesterday in the video, I don't have my abhorrent Ghoul King as my general anyway, just because I like having the Crypt Haunter or the Crypt Infernal Courtier just to make the Flares or Horrors battle line. And also, as I think the general, the Ghoul King command ability anyway as a general is not particularly good, bringing in, you know, just those models on the side of the table edge, minimal sized units. I mean, like I said, the abhorrent Ghoul King on Zombie Dragons one, being able to bring on heroes onto the board edge is a lot better. However, for me, I don't particularly like this. I mean, I suppose if you're running a lot of Crypt Ghouls in your army, and you have your abhorrent Ghoul King as your general, because, you know, you've got enough battle line made up from your Crypt Ghouls, you're not worried about making sure your Crypt Horrors or Crypt Flares fill in one of those slots. It can be good because you could use Inspiring Presence twice. So if you've got, you know, 2 big blocks of 40 Ghouls, put Inspiring Presence on both of them, they're not running away. So, you know, that there has got a good use to it. However, if you're taking a more sort of elite army, like lots of Horrors and lots of Flares, it still has its uses, but not as much. I mean, and particularly how this battalion is all about Crypt Horrors and that Crypt Haunter. However, the battalion does cost 150 points, so it's getting relatively pricey now for this battalion. And like I say, you've got 2 units of Crypt Horrors, so you know you're looking at 160 points for both of those. So if you take the minimum size, that's 320 points, and then the Crypt Haunter is 120 points. So the minimum points cost of this is 480 points, then plus 150. So you're looking at 630 points for the minimum cost. So cheaper than the Royal Family, like I said. And I feel like this has more use in it because, like I said, the Steward to the King, which is the letting your Horror and Ghoul King have 2 command abilities, is situational, how you build your army, but can be good. The Loyal Subjects one, being able to reroll failed hit rolls for your Crypt Horrors that are in this battalion, if they're not within 15 inches of the Ghoul King, is really good, especially how your Ghoul King, like I say, can be sniped off. So it could be good. You can build the majority of your army around this, like if you take big unit sizes of Crypt Horrors, like 9-man units, and then you take the Crypt Haunter Courtier. As you know, as your general, you could do to make the Crypt Horrors battle line. That's probably what I would do. So you can do that, and then add in a few more courtiers here and there, some ghouls to hold your objectives for you, and it could be worthwhile, and you could make your army not have too many drops in the deployment, so you might be able to go first as long as you're not going against some of these super Battletome armies like Blaze of Corn, you know, Stormcast, Fire Slayers, and so on. So Attendants of Court, it does have its uses. It's not that amazing, to be honest. You know, it's nothing game changing, of course, but it is better than the Royal Family. So you know, we are starting to see better ones. Now onto the Dead Watch, which is my personal favourite out of all the battalions they have. Now, it is the most expensive, as it does come in at a whopping 210 points, which is pretty hefty for any battalion, to be honest. But anyway, we'll get to why I think it can be worth that. So, the Dead Watch. Trusted guardians of the king, the Dead Watch hammer into any who might endanger him. Victims not slain in the first attack are sent fleeing in terror as the Crypt Flares loose their neon war cry. So, the organisation. A Dead Watch consists of the following units: 1 Crypt Infernal Courtier and 3 units of Crypt Flares. Now, it only has 1 ability for a battalion that costs 210 points, but we get to why I think it's that good. The Abhorrent King's Own. Normally the King's bodyguard, the winged monstrosities that form the ranks of the Dead Watch, epitomise the belief that their best defence is a good offence. In your hero phase, you can make a piling move and attack with each Dead Watch unit as if it were the combat phase. Now, only 1 ability, but I think it is personally the best one there is for these battalions. As like I said, the minimum size units you need is the Crypt Infernal Courtier. You know, it comes at 140 points. Now you need 3 units of Crypt Flares, and that can be quite pricey just by itself in the minimum, because that's 160 each, and that's 480 in total. So plus the Infernal, that is 620, and then with the battalion cost, that is 830 points in total, minimum, just for this battalion. So it's the most expensive one, including the requirements and the cost of the battalion that we've seen so far. However, this is how I based my Flesh Eater Court army, the one I take to tournaments, because 3 units of Crypt Flares. Now I take a unit of, this is how I used to take it to a tournament. I took a unit of 3, a unit of 6, and a unit of 9. Now the idea behind that was the unit of 9 would be the sledgehammer and would generally be really hard to kill. And the enemy had so much trouble with it. I mean, like in tournaments, I got alpha striked by 6 Kernel Hunters with Scythes and Alarial first turn, and they killed, I think, about nearly all of them. I think they killed about 7 out of the 9. And as they had the first turn, luckily I passed my Battle Shock, thank God. And then it was my turn. So I brought back my unit of flares that had been decimated with both my courtiers. So I brought them all the way back up to full strength, as I was pretty lucky there. And then I piled and attacked them in my hero phase. And then, of course, when it was the previous enemy's combat phase, I would have done a little bit of damage. So I did damage there. And then in my hero phase, I did damage. And then in my combat phase, I did damage. And I can't remember who got the next priority. But anyway, after all that damage I did to them, I think I wiped out the Kernel Hunters down to just one man, and he ran away in the Battle Shock. So it's just Alarial left. And then I was just keeping regenerating my flares. Of course, Alarial was doing so much damage to me. Well, I say she was doing so much damage to me. I mean, her giant beetle mainly was doing so much damage. But he just couldn't keep up with how much I could regenerate and how much damage I could output to the enemy. So the nice thing about this battalion being able to do, obviously, your pioneer attacking in the hero phase is, of course, it's a chance for you just to do, extra damage and stuff. But how your opponent will usually think about how they're going to play their own army is that they don't tend to expect the enemy to be able to do things out of place. They might expect the enemy to be able to do horrific damage to them in the combat phase, but they're not used to the enemy being able to attack them in the hero phase and, various other abilities that are out there. Because there's just too many to keep track on, frankly. So that's what the unit of 9 did. The unit of 6 was there to be fairly confident fighters, but to also hold objectives if needed. And then the unit of 3 was just because I had to have 3 units. So that was that. I did first run them as 3 units of 6, but I found it's best to just have 1 unit just to be able to do so much damage to the enemy. The next unit to be able to do a fair amount of damage to the enemy. I mean, a unit of 6 is not bad. And then a unit of 3 just as a sort of tax, really. Now, you'll hear people say that in elite units for the Fleshy Courts, of course, being the Flares and the Horrors, the best size units to take are units of 6, because if you take a unit of 9, there's a big chance that not all of them will be able to pile in an attack and, make the most of all their damage, and your points are best being spent elsewhere. However, I strongly disagree with that, as even if you can't get all of your guys into combat in the unit, that's not the main point to have a lot of models in a unit of, like, Crit Flares, for example. The reason why you have a lot of models is just to make sure you can always have a couple at the back just to string out a little bit to make sure they're always within range of abilities and courtiers to be able to bring them back. Because that's the main thing. I mean, yeah, Crit Flares can do a lot of damage, on the initial charge and when they first attack. But with Fleshy Courts, you fight a war of attrition. It's not all just about the first charge and breaking the enemy straight away. You're fighting a war of attrition, like I say. So you want to be able to bring back your units. If you take a unit of 6, that's fairly easy to be wiped out, in all honesty. You think, that's, a unit of 6 of these guys is 320 points. That's quite a lot of points just for, 6 models. However, if the enemy wants to dedicate to make sure it's wiped out, they will do that pretty easily. So a unit of 9 makes it a lot harder for the enemy to be able to wipe this unit out. And that's always really, you just don't, because it's, like I say, you take a unit of 9 and you can keep on bringing them back, as long as your courtiers are in range, of course. You can keep on bringing them back until the whole unit's wiped out. And then when they're all wiped out, you're a little bit buggered. So the longer you can have the unit with even just a couple of models left in it, just to keep on regenerating them, is the key here. If you just take a unit of 6 because, well, that's all that can be able to pile in attack and combat anyway, really, realistically, that's not the point. The point is, always make sure that you have enough models in this unit, so if they take a really heavy hit, you'll still have a couple left over to be able to regenerate. So that's a big thing here for this, for the horrors and flares. I mean, I've even taken units of 12, and of course, if you take a unit of 12 flares, they're not going to be able to all get into combat. You know, maybe 1 out of 10 times, and the enemies really, stretch their line out. You'll be able to charge them all in. They'll be able to fight. But that's not the main thing for them. The main thing is just to have, if you had a unit of 12, like I say, have the majority of them in combat, and then the rest of them just stretching out a little bit, like a chain sort of behind them, just so you can have your courtiers who are a little bit further back because they want to be out of the range of the enemy shooting, but still be in range of your big unit to be able to bring them back when they too take damage and suffer casualties. So that's how I was running this battalion before. I also had, so as well as the unit of 9 flares, a unit of 6 flares, and a unit of 3 flares, and then the Infernal Courtier, was obviously what I had to take for this battalion. I also took a Terrorgeist, who was, big, scary and nasty, and he synergised well with the army because he had this thing called the Grim Garnet artifact, which basically made the enemy -2 bravery within 6 inches of him, which worked well with the flares. However, I did find the Terrorgeist, as lovely as he was, on average he probably killed about 400 points of the enemy. And as this is a Terrorgeist with an Abattoir and Ghoul King on top of it we're talking about, he costs 400 points himself. So if he's only adding to the army, if he can only kill what he costs himself, I thought it would be better to put in different courtiers. So I took him out. But in the original army, I also had a Vargolf courtier and a Necromancer. Which the Necromancer we don't really talk about too much now because unfortunately, for Flesh-Eater Courts anyway, his spell won't work on them. But that was the original army. Now the army that I'm playing around with and I'm planning to take to the Grand Tournament at Warhammer World for Heat 2 is, so this battalion again, the Dead Watch, and then the units will be 1 Encrypt Infernal Courtier, 2 units of 9 Flayers, and then a unit of 3 as again, like I say, a sort of tax because you have to. So the 2 units of 9 Flayers, the idea behind that is that instead of just having one, huge unit the enemy's going to have to completely wipe out, now they've got 2. So they're going to have to try and focus all their fire on 1. And if they're focusing all their fire on 1, they're not worrying about, they're not taking care of the heroes I have. So I've got, with the Terrorgeist out, it gave me loads of points. So I've got 1 Infernal Courtier, of course, for the battalion, and then 2 Vargol's Courtier because they've got a bit more wounds. They're a little bit more survivable if you can tag them into combat a little bit so they can kill and heal back from, feasting on the dead corpses. And it just gives me 3 heroes to be able to bring back my flares. So if I can have all my heroes in range of all the flare units, I essentially have 18 dice to roll to bring back flares, which in my games I've been practicing with has been amazing and has turned the tide of the battle really well. So the enemy has a choice. They can try and shoot all my heroes to kill them so they can't bring back my flares. However, if they do that, 2 Vargolfs and then Encrypt Infernal Courtier, you're looking at, in total, what would that be? That's 22 wounds they've got to wipe out. That's more than doable if they've got a lot of shooting. However, once they've wiped out those courtiers, which will probably take them a couple of turns, they've now got to deal with 2 units of 9 flares and then the unit of 3. So that is 21 flares in total they've got to deal with. Which, and if they don't have many turns to deal with it, and by then my flares will already be upon them, I wouldn't want to be the opponent at that point in the game, shall we say. So it really makes your enemy have to think about it. And with the piling attacking in your hero phase, you've got more flares, so you're taking more advantage of it. I tend to keep the unit of 3 out of combat and just have it as a harassing unit if I have to. So we're talking about the 2 units of 9. That's 2 units of 9 flares that will be piling attacking in your hero phase, and then obviously in your combat phase. That's pretty damn nasty, to be honest, as was it how many attacks they make each is 4 standard, so you're looking at 36 attacks, and then +1 for the Crypt Inferno, I believe he's called. So that is 37 in total for 1 unit of 9, and then times that by 2, of course, because you'll be piling attacking the hero phase and then the combat phase. That gives us 74 attacks just from 1 unit in 1 turn. If you get them in combat, and if they're attacking the hero phase, that's 74 attacks from 1 unit. But you have 2 units of 9, so if you get everything in combat and it's all going well, you're making 148 attacks with this unit, doing mortal wounds on 6s, if not buffed and getting pluses to that. So yeah, they can, like I say, you have to tick all these things off, and like I say, unit of 9 is hard for them all to get into combat, and so on. But if you manage to, get lucky, you manage to do all your movement well, and you manage to get everything there, then this unit can really just ruin your opponent's day. And of course, if you're playing a friendly game, this list can be pretty horrendous. However, in a tournament, it's a knife fight, everyone just goes to the throat, so this could be really good for that. So that's why I use the flares. So like I say, in the list I'm running at the moment, it's the Dead Watch, so 2 units of 9 flares and then a unit of 3, and the Crypt Infernal Courtier. I also have 2 Vargul's Courtiers, and then what I also have is 1 unit of 20 Ghouls, just to hold my back objective, or to auto take a objective where the battalion, where the battle plan is like units of 20 or more models automatically take objectives. Just there to give me options, and it means that I can bring all my flares forward and keep my Ghouls back. So I can use all my flares offensively and then just use my Ghouls to try and hold objectives and so on. So that's the list I'm running at the moment. I've had 4 or 5 games of it so far, and safe to say I haven't lost one. So, and I've played against people who regularly go to tournaments, so that is a good sign. And it also means that the army is a 4-drop army. So it means that in some games you will be deploying your. You will finish deploying your army first, so you'll get to choose if the enemy goes first or if you go first. And in certain battle plans, that can be a big bonus. So yeah, that's that. And then just to make sure the Vargul's benefit from if a Flesh-Eater Court Wizard casts a spell, as in this army, as you can probably work out, there is no Flesh-Eater Court Wizard. I give my general the command trait Dark Wizardry, I believe it's called. So it turns them into a wizard, so the Vargul's, if you cast that spell, are still re-rolling failed hit rolls if needed. So that's the Dead Watch Battalion. Like I say, 210 points. It's only worth taking if you can make your whole army based around it. I mean, like, admittedly, the army I've just told you about, I have 21 flares in total. I appreciate, that can be a lot of money to spend on 1 unit. I mean, I think it costs around like £300 or something. But for me personally, when I saw this battalion, when I first bought my Flesh-Eater Court Battle Tome, and I saw this battalion, I really liked the models. Always been a big fan of Cryptoids and Vargheist, and as they kit bash both of them, I really liked the models, and I thought this would be a really cool way to build the army, and also to prove that a lot of people say Flesh-Eater Courts is a horde army, and it can only be a horde army. However, with the Dead Watch, and even if you just take an elite army of horrors, so they have a couple of battalions we'll get to as well, but with the Dead Watch in particular, it shows that you can run your army without it being a horde army. Like, for example, the list I took before, I took it to the grand final at Warhammer World for the GT, and then at Blood and Glory. And when I took it to Blood and Glory, the army was, so the Dead Watch, and it had a unit of 9 flares, unit of 6 flares, and a unit of 3. Had the Crypt Infernal Courtier, and like I said, the Terrorgeist, the Vargul, and the Necromancer. Now, in that, out of 110 players there were there, I came 20th, and I was, out of 17 Death Armies, I I came third, and then out of all the Flesh Eater Court armies, where I think there was about, I can't remember how many there were, I think 6 to 10, something like that, I managed to come first. So, and a lot of those armies did have hordes, they did have a lot of what's called the Ghoul Patrol, which is the battalion we'll get to in a moment, and they just had like a lot of models generally just to catch the objectives. So I proved that elite armies can do very well, especially for the Flesh Eater Courts. There was some matchups where I just couldn't do anything against, like I fought against a Murder Host, and in the Murder Host army it had 3 units of 30 Bloodletters, I believe, or 4 units of 30 it might have been. But his army in total had 138 models, and my army had a total of 22 models. So basically in that game, that's the one game I've been in a tournament where I just went kill points, kill points, kill points. Wasn't even worrying about the objectives at that point. So it shows that an elite army can be outclassed by just sheer numbers. You know, that's still very much true. However, in that tournament there were 6 games and I won 4 out of 6. So in the majority of my games, which I did quite a few hordes as well, it showed that it's not all about, you know, this horde meta, as been told, as long as you can find ways to deal with it, as the flares have lots of attacks. So that's why I like the flares, so they had lots of attacks over -1 rend to deal with the hordes, and then if the enemy was a Stormcast, which one of them was, and had a 2-up save rolling ones, I was capable of doing a lot of mortal wounds if, you know, if I got 6s to hit and so on. So it can sort of, this army can deal with hordes and you know, armor, heavy armies such as the Stormcast. So that's the Deadwatch Battalion. I've talked about it for a long time now, but it's just because it's my favourite battalion and it's what I have the most experience with. So what I can say of this battalion is expensive. However, if you go for it, go hard. Have as many flares as you can in it. Like I say, 21 flares sounds like definitely the most you want in this, just so you have enough points left over for your courtiers and a few ghouls to catch your objectives. But no, so that is the battalion, and I think it is one of the most viable ones the Flesh Eater Courts have. So, moving on to the next battalion, the Abattoir. And this comes in at 110 points, so not too expensive at all, really. And then let's have a look at the story behind it. The Abattoir reaps a fleshy toll from the opposing army. The Lord Leverbelch directing his warriors with exacting precision to carve off bloody chunks of meat for the king's feasting table. Okay, so this battalion in the story is all about, you know, they're sort of the butchers, they're sort of the ones who go around picking the best bits of meat, you know, to serve the king, so, you know, that's all quite nice. And then the organisation, so an Abattoir consists of the following units: 1 Crypt Haunter Courtier, 2 units of Crypt Horrors, and 1 unit of Crypt Ghouls. Okay, so compared to the last ones we've seen, quite a mixture of units, as the ones before we've seen are just about Abattoir and Ghoul Kings, or just about Crypt Horrors, or just about Flares, so nice to see a bit of a mixture here. And it has 2 abilities, so the first one, Body Part Acquisition. True to the purpose, the Abattoir displays an uncanny talent for acquiring culinary provisions in battle. In your hero phase, roll a dice for each enemy model within 3 inches of an Abattoir model. On a roll of a 6, the unit of the model being rolled for suffers a mortal wound. Okay, so start of this one, this alright, it can be good. If you, especially, like, I'll go over the organisation again. So the Haunter, yep, that's good to bring back your flares. The 2 units of Crypt Horrors, yep. And then the Crypt Ghouls. Now, if you make the Crypt Ghouls just 1 unit, so if you make it a unit of 40, number 1 you get a bit of a discount, you get 40 points knocked off. And you make the best part of the body part acquisition ability, because if you have a unit of 40 ghouls stretched out into your opponent's face, you'll be rolling dice for each of the enemy models within 3 inches of them. So remember, that will more than likely not just be the first rank that you're fighting, it will also be the enemy models behind that as well, just a little bit behind, because 3 inches is actually quite big. So you should get a lot of enemy models in range, of course, depending on what army you're fighting. I mean, like, there are, like, as I just mentioned, the Murder Host army that I fought had 138 models in it, so that's loads, but the army I fought it with only had 22. So, you know, there are going to be ups and downs. However, as Crypt Horrors and Crypt Ghouls do not have the capability of doing mortal wounds, unlike the Flares, even if you don't get to roll too many dice because your opponent doesn't have a very large army, it's still a chance to do mortal wounds. You know, that shouldn't be shunned. So mortal wounds are generally referred to as being really good in Age of Sigmar, especially when you go against, like I said, Stormcast arms with 2-up save rolling ones. So yes, that is good. That is a nice ability, that, especially how, like I say, if you have a unit of 40 Crypt Ghouls, you have 2 units of Crypt Horrors, make them big units, you know, see if you can get them up to units of 9, maybe a unit of 6 instead, and then the Crypt Haunter Courtier. So if you really wanted to, you could put most of your army into this battalion, make the Crypt Haunter your general, so the Crypt Horrors become battle line, and then the unit of Crypt Ghouls, so you've got all your battle lines for a 2,000 point army. So you get that sorted, and then maybe just add in, well, I say maybe, make sure you add in some, you know, maybe 1 or 2 Ghoul Kings, you know, at least 1 to make you get the rerolls to hit, ideally 2, and then just Courtiers just to bring back your models. Could be a good army with not too many drops there. Okay, and then the second ability, the Choicest Cuts. As Lord Leverbelch, the Crypt Haunter Courtier in command of the Abattoir, knows exactly where to carve the best cut of meat from the flanks of a prey beast. Add 1 to the wound rolls for the Abattoir's Courtier in the combat phase if the target is a monster. Okay, so this is a bit conflicting for me because, like I've said, try to not get the Courtiers into combat, as honestly, having them as a support unit is the best way you can, because they're just there to bring back your models. I stressed this a lot in the last video I did, talking about the Fleshy Court units. However, you can be forced to get things into combat, as you can, like if you need to take an objective and you've got, let's say you've got your Crypt Horrors there, they're quite weakened, you don't know if they can push the enemy off it, being able to just charge in your Crypt Haunter Courtier, this is late game we're talking about, just to deal the extra damage, to take the objective, can be the, you know, difference between winning and not winning the game. So a reminder of his attacks, so he's got 2, so the Massive Bone Club, so 1 inch range, 3 attacks, force to hit, freeze to wound, no rend and 3 damage. And then there's the next one, which is definitely not as good, but it's, you know, it's an extra chance to do more damage. So it's got a 1 inch range, 2 attacks, force to hit, freeze to wound, no rend, 1 damage, and that is the Ranted Talons. So let's look at the Massive Bone Club, as that is the best one by far. So you're hitting on a 4, however, if you make sure you've got your opponent Ghoul King nearby, within 15 inches, you know, you can reroll failed hit rolls, so you've pretty much got that covered. And then you're normally hitting on a 3. So you take this guy in the Abattoir and go up against monsters with him. Like I say, going up against a monster is a bit, with this guy you really want to keep alive just to bring back your flares, but sorry, not your flares, your horrors. I don't know, let's just say, you know, all your horrors are dead, you know, it doesn't matter anymore if you're in that sort of situation, or a monster's nearly dead and you just need to, like I say, push it over to kill it, especially like I say in the battle plans where monsters control objectives. So in that sort of scenario, he's got 3 attacks, make sure the Ghoul King's nearby, so hitting on a 4, re-rolling, and then now, going against the monster, he's wounded on a 2. So that's pretty damn good, and then no rend, which is, you know, a shame, but we've talked about why these guys don't have rend. And then 3 damage, and like I say, it hasn't got rend, but unless you're going against these super monsters, quite a lot of them only have, surprisingly, like at best, a 4-up save, you know, sometimes a 5-up save. Of course you get the odd monster that gets a 3-up save and so on, but a lot of them are only rocking 4-up saves, so there's a good chance they're going to fail this. And if they do, if they get unlucky, there's a good chance you can do 9 damage from that 1 attack. So, you know, that's something to think about if the situation arises. So those are the 2 abilities. The first one, you know, chances of doing mortal wounds in your hero phase, and then the next one, making your, you know, Crypt Haunter Courtier from the battalion fairly good at, you know, taking down monsters. So this is probably regarded as being, I mean, I'm not going to say it's one of the best ones, because I think that's definitely the Dead Watch, and then, well, for me it's definitely the Dead Watch, and then some people like the Ghoul Patrol. But the Abattoir is definitely one worth thinking about. I mean, I've been considering this as I've been looking to maybe start trying out horrors a lot more, to see how useful they can be, and try and make an army that, like I say, if you base your army mainly in this battalion, you could have maybe not too many drops. So we're going to play around with that later. And yeah, so this appeals to me. You've got a chance to do more wins in the hero phases. Like I say, you've got big units of this, big units in this battalion. You've got even more chance of doing mortal wounds to the enemy. And like I say, I'll read that rule again. So in your hero phase, roll a dice for each enemy model within 3 inches of an Abattoir model. On a roll of a 6, the unit of the model being rolled for suffers a mortal wound. So it's on a roll of a 6, but if you roll enough dice, you know, you're going to get enough 6s. You know, it's that old say, you know, if you throw enough mud at the wall, some of it's going to stick. And then if your Crypt Haunter has to get into combat against a monster in that odd situation, he's got a good chance of doing damage to it, as long as it's not a Star Drake. So, yeah, not a bad battalion. And how much did I say it was? 110 points. Not badly costed either, you know, that's good for the points cost. And also, you get an extra artifact if you take a battalion, of course. So yeah, I would recommend that, certainly. Up next, we have the Ghoul Patrol. Scuttling through the shadows, the Mordents of the Ghoul Patrol burst from the darkness to ambush their prey, pulling them down in a fury of rancid fangs and crusted claws before devouring them. Okay, so the Ghoul Patrol is it's the best one to use if you want to go the Horde way for Flesh Eater Courts. Like I said, I personally don't. I go for the Elite option, but the Horde option is still very good in its own. You know, some people would argue it's better, but as I mentioned before, you know, that's up for debate. Okay, so the organisation. So a Ghoul Patrol consists of the following units: 1 Crypt Gas Courtier, 3 units of Crypt Ghouls. So this is fairly achievable. Admittedly, Crypt Ghouls, you want to take big units of them. So immediately springs to mind is 3 units of 40. That might be too many to have. However, this will cover all your battle line for your Flesh Eater Court army. If you take, you know, if you just take an Abattoir and Ghoul King as a general, or if you take any of the courtiers as a general, Crypt Ghouls are always battle line for death at the moment. So yeah, this covers all your battle line, so all your requirements, and you get your hero. So everything you add on after this is up to you, essentially. And with this battalion costing 150 points, you know, it doesn't add up to be too expensive, the minimum cost. I mean, if you're taking this the bare minimum, which you shouldn't, but we'll talk about it, you know, so 3 units of Crypt Ghouls, so that's 300 points in total. The Crypt Gas Courtier, that's 80 points, so that's 380. And then the battalion being 150, so you're looking at 530, I believe, for that. So pretty damn cheap, you know, the minimum cost. However, as you're going to want to have your units of Crypt Ghouls, let's say let's talk about just having 3 units of 40, just to see the most expensive way to this battalion. So each unit would then cost 360 points. So the total cost of the Crypt Ghouls there would be 1,080 points. And then the Crypt Ghast, so that would be 1,160 points. And then the battalion itself, 150 points. So that would be 1,310 points. Okay, so a little bit of maths, but so that's a lot of points, admittedly. However, you would have 3 units of 40 ghouls, you know, which is great for taking the objectives, and, you know, the Crypt Gas Courtier. So, with all the points out of the way, let's have a look at the abilities. So, on patrol, instead of setting up the units in a Ghoul patrol on the battlefield, you must place them to one side. In your first movement phase, you must set up all of these units wholly within 6 inches of any board edge of the battlefield and more than 9 inches from enemy models. The this counts as their move for that turn. Okay, so if you do go heavy on this battalion, you can make your enemy play a sort of a guessing game, shall we say. So let's say they've got a 1-drop army, you know, and they deploy first, and then obviously most of your army is not on the battlefield, so they don't really know how to deploy so much. And if they elect to go first on the first battle round, which they probably wouldn't, but if they did, they don't know where your army's going to come on from. And this is the same as if you manage to deploy your army first, it can be pretty good to make your opponent take the first turn to be able to go first, because then he doesn't know, you know, what direction your army's going to come on, and a lot of the time he'll have to put his models, string them out along his back board edge to make sure you can't come on from behind him and do a massive flanking manoeuvre. So it really forces your opponent to play a certain way, which can be really good. So and also being able to bring these guys up on the battlefield where you feel like they're needed after seeing how your whole enemy army has deployed is a big deal. And also you wouldn't be able to bring them on the board edge and then automatically take an objective, as there's no, in any of the 6 battle plans for match play in Age of Sigmar, there are no objectives that are within 6 inches of the board edge, so you can't take it automatically. However, you bring these guys on, and then in your next movement phase, if they can do, they can, you know, obviously move forward. They, you know, move 6 inches basic for these guys, and they run and so on. They can easily, quickly get onto an objective within a couple of turns. So that's not bad at all. And it means you can be a lot more flexible if you're playing in a tournament and you're playing a series of 6 games and you don't know what armies you'll be facing. You can adapt to what army you're facing. So it's very good for that. And then the next one, the final ability, Drawn to Battle. Through the logistical organisation of the Ghoul patrols ambushes often leaves much to be desired. Those that wander astray and miss the initial attack are soon reunited with their kin as the stragglers trickle onto the battlefield. In each of your hero phases, roll a dice for each unit of crit ghouls from this battalion that is on the battlefield and add that many models to the unit. Okay, so this is why you want to make this battalion incredibly expensive and take 3 units of 40 crit ghouls, because with this Drawn to Battle ability, with them being able to roll a dice in each of your hero phases and bringing that many ghouls back to that unit, that's better than having a courtier nearby, frankly. Because with a courtier, you roll 6 dice and every 2 up you can bring back a crit ghoul to that unit, to units within 10 inches. However, with Drawn to Battle, it's an automatic at least 1 crit ghoul coming back and up to 6. So if you take 3 units of 40, that means the enemy is going to have to definitely wipe the unit out to stop them bringing any models back, rather than them just sniping out the courtiers that will bring back the ghouls. So that's a really good battalion special ability, as well as the on patrol being able to set up your guys on the first movement phase. So this is why a lot of people like this battalion, because your adaptability to be able to choose where you want to come on each game, and also the just the sheer regeneration you're going to have with this battalion is huge. I mean, it's the best any flesh eater court unit has. And especially how, like I say, if you really, really, really want to go heavy on the ghouls, and you're not too worried about how many drops you have in your army, like I say, you have 3 units of 40 of these, the Cryptghast Courtier, and then lots of Cryptghast Courtiers that aren't in this battalion as well, just to bring back ghouls, and then a few Abattoir and Ghoul Kings dotted about, and you can have a huge army that's good for taking objectives, and a very aggressive army, because like I say, it's a lot of models, good for taking objectives, but also the Crypt Ghouls, if you have a unit of 20 or more, so if you have a unit of 40, you definitely will be making 3 attacks for each ghoul, and then you put the Dark Hunger on them from the Abattoir and Ghoul King. Now they're making 4 attacks each, and let's say you've crashed this into an enemy unit, front on, let's say you get, you've got 10 lined up attacking the enemy, and then because their bases are just under 1 inch and you've got a 1 inch range on your weapons, you should be able to get 2 ranks to be able to attack. So that's 20 ghouls. So that's 20 ghouls, each of them making 4 attacks. So bear that in mind. So that is so that's 80 attacks from 20 ghouls. So not really bad. And then re-rolling failed hit rolls of 1 if make sure you get your Ghoul King nearby. So that's why people like this battalion, because it's just like I say, it's durability and it's survivability as well for a real war of attrition, and just the sheer amount of numbers you can have just to take the objectives. So that is the Ghoul Patrol, and I do feel like it has a fantastic name as well, because obviously the whole story behind the Flesh-Eater Courts, how, you know, I think the heroic warriors, you know, leading the fight against chaos and all other forces of evil, when they are actually, you know, pains me to admit it, but, you know, sort of just incredibly delusional cannibals. It's just really good, you know, and I love the connection they have with what used to be Battalion. I personally think that's really funny. So that's the Ghoul Patrol. Like I say, very good. I would say I prefer the Dead Watch, because that's just me, because, you know, I went out there and spent too much money on crit flares, and however, you know, competitively, I'd say the Dead Watch and the Ghoul Patrol can be on the same level. So they are probably the 2 best battalions for the Flesh-Eater Courts. However, we will obviously look at the other battalions, because they do have their own strengths as well. So, moving on to the next one, King's Ghouls. The proud heart of their ruler's army, the King's Ghouls advance in motley ranks, give voice to hissing war chants, and charge madly into battle, burying their enemies under their reeking bodies. Okay, so the King's Ghouls is a battalion that I've looked into recently to try doing. I might try this one out on a game I have on Friday, just to see how well it does. As it caught my attention, as it doesn't look like it's hugely popular, but I think it does have its uses. So, onto the organisation. So, a King's Ghoul battalion consists of the following units: 1 Cryptghast Courtier, 1 unit of Cryptoirs, and 2 units of Crypt Ghouls. And then the total cost of this battalion is only 90 points. So this is really cheap for a battalion these days. And of course, you know, a battalion just means that you can drop your army quicker and you get an extra artifact. So it has its benefits just in that alone. Now, and it's not too expensive, because if you want to take the bare minimum here, which of course I suggest you don't do, but if you really want to, you can. So 2 units of Crypt Ghouls, so that's 200 points. 1 unit of Cryptoirs, so that's 160 points. And then 1 Cryptghast Courtier. So you're looking at a total of 360 for the horrors and the ghouls, and then the ghast on top is 440 points, and then of course plus the King's Ghouls is 530 points for the minimum cost of this battalion, which I think is really good. Of course, the way I'm looking at doing it is having 2 units of Crypt Ghouls, so looking at having maybe 2 units of 40 Crypt Ghouls would be best, so you know that's 360 points each, you know, which admittedly is, you know, a lot of points, because that will come to 720, and then have a unit of 9 Crypt Horrors, you know, which is 480 points, so that would come to so that would come to 1100, and then the Cryptghast is 1180. So quite expensive doing it that way, but that's a really good and essential part of your army. You've got your Crypt Horrors to do all the damage, and you've got your Crypt Ghouls to hold on the objectives. So, with no further more ado, let's go on to the abilities. So, Guardians of the Court. Tasked with protecting the lair of their master, the King's Ghouls would rather fight to the last man than see it ransacked by intruders. You do not need to make Battlefield tests for King's Ghoul units that are within your own territory. Now, I think this ability, when I first read it, sounded a bit, you know, meh, not too exciting, but I think it's really good, because what you do is you have your horrors to go forward, to be that aggressive hammer in your army, while, of course, your ghouls are more like an anvil, holding back and defending your own objectives. And while they're defending your own objectives, you're not having to worry about putting Inspiring Presence on them or anything. You can put that on the Crypt Trolls because your ghouls will not run away. So your enemy's going to have to do quite a lot of damage to them to really to try and take your back objectives, which I thought was really good. It's just because you don't have to worry about your ghouls with Battle Shock in your own territory. Admittedly, if you get Alpha Striked and you've got your Crypt Trolls in your territory, and there's always a chance that they could run away if you take a big unit of them. So just the reassurance that you're not worrying about Battle Shock is really, really nice, especially how there used to be a few ways to make you minus this to your bravery, but now, as I've talked about before, there are a lot of ways to make you minus to your bravery. I mean, there's my friend who plays Blades of Khorne. He's been looking at Slaves of Darkness, and he's managed to find a way to make his army like -5 bravery to the enemy, which would just be horrific. So being able to forget about Battle Shock is really good. So I really like that ability. Like I say, it's not like a really aggressive ability and really exciting loads of attacks like the Dead Watch being able to pile in attacking hero phase. However, it's a really nice and ability to have, so you don't have to worry about Battle Shock. It's just a really nice, simple but effective ability, essentially. Okay, and then the next ability, the Valorous Men-at-Arms. The King's Ghouls will hurl themselves boldly into the foe in order to pin them down and prevent their enemies from breaking through to their territory beyond. If the King's Ghouls unit are within 3 inches of an enemy unit in your hero phase, you can make a 6-inch piling move with any models in that unit as if it were the combat phase. Now, so you get to pile in 6 inches, which is big. Bear in mind you have to be within 3 inches of the enemy, so you have to be in combat. However, like I said, if you take a unit of 9 Crypt Horrors, what I'm tempting to do is have a unit of 12 Crypt Horrors. I only got 9 at the moment, but I've got 3 brand new to make, which I'm debating to make them Vargeist for the new Battle Tome coming out, Crypt Flares just because I love Crypt Flares, and 24, why wouldn't you want that many? Or to make my unit of 9 Crypt Horrors a unit of 12. Now, a unit of 12, like I've mentioned already in this video, is not all going to be able to get into combat. But they're there for the survivability to be able to bring them back. However, with a 6-inch piling move in your hero phase, getting a unit of 12 Crypt Horrors all fighting into combat is still a challenge, but getting the extra 6-inch piling move in your hero phase, like I said, means that you might be able to attack with maybe not all of them, but with most of them, which having, let's say out of the 12 you get 10 of them in combat because of the extra pilings you're doing. That's just horrific because they're each making 3 attacks each, so 10, so that's 30 attacks, and then if you put Dark Hunger on them from a Ghoul King, that is an extra attack each, so that's 40 attacks. Hitting on 4s, if you've got the Ghoul King within range, re-rolling failed hit rolls. Wounded on 3s, no rend, 2 damage. If you get 6s to wound, it becomes 3 damage. I talked about Crypt Horrors a lot in my unit video if you want to have a look at that. But that can make this unit really good, because like I say, when you're reading through it and you think, like where does it say? If any King's Ghoul units are within 3 inches of the enemy units in your hero phase, you can make a 6-inch piling move with models in that unit as if it were the combat phase, and then it stops and you feel like, oh, what, you don't get to attack as well, It feels a bit of, like a gut wrencher a little bit, that one. But when you realise you're just using it to get the extra piling move to be able to make more of them attack in your combat phase, it's really good. And of course this works for the King's Ghouls, so also work for the Crypt Ghouls as well. So I think this battalion for 90 points is really good, and I'm really excited to I think I am going to use this on Friday just to see what it can do and see the effects of it. And because like I say, not a lot of people use it, and there might be quite a few people who use it. Just in my experience, I've never fought anyone who has this battalion, so be interested in trying it out for myself to see how it does. And like I say, see the 2 abilities in it, you're not worrying about Battle Shock in your territory, especially like I say if you build most of your army from this battalion, not worrying about Battle Shock in your territory. And like I say, it's great for holding your back objectives. And then your big unit of Crypt Horrors or Crypt Ghouls if needed, can have the necessary piling range to be the most effective they can in combat. So for 90 points, makes your army easier to drop. You're not worrying about battle shock. You can get more of your guys into combat, and you get an extra artifact. So I think that's really good, and I'm generally excited to try that one out. Now the next battalion is the Royal Mordents. Under the leadership of the Mangris Ghoul, the elite warriors of the Royal Mordents demonstrate a twisted parody of military strategy in battle, instantly reacting to their courtiers' roared commands. Now, so this battalion, I just want to say first off, it only costs 70 points. So we actually have a battalion here that costs 70 points. I don't know how many battalions there are in Age of Sigmar now that cost 70 points or less. So to start off, this can't go that wrong. You know, for 70 points, you can't really argue for too much. So if it's got an ability, you know, it's a bonus, because already you're making your army easy to drop, and well, relatively easy to drop, and you get an extra artifact. For 70 points, you know, it's not bad. So let's have a look at the organisation. A Royal Mordents battalion consists of the following units: 1 Vargolf Courtier, 1 unit of Cryptoids, 1 unit of Crypt Flares, and 1 unit of Crypt Ghouls. So already you might be able to tell why this battalion is one of the cheaper ones, because you get a real mixed bag here. And I don't mean it's bad, because you do generally want to have a Vargolf Courtier in your army. You do generally want to have Crypt Ghouls in your army to hold the objectives. However, you usually go one way or the other way when it comes to horrors and flares, as you usually go hard on horrors or you go hard on flares, essentially. So having both of them in your army is fine. It just means your horrors can be used to clear horde units, and your flares can be used to deal with enemy elite stuff with the -1 rend and the mortal wounds. However, so that's fine by itself. And then the Vargolf obviously can bring all 3 of those different types of units back, because he's a fantastic model. However, if you think, I want to have some more courtiers in my army and some ones a bit cheaper than the Vargolf, to be able to have to bring back some of the flares, you're going to have their own infernal courtier, and he won't benefit your Crypt Horrors or Crypt Ghouls. And then if you want to make your Crypt Horrors a bit more stronger, you're going to have to bring their hero, and that's not going to benefit your other 2 units in your army. So unless you go really heavy on Vargolfs, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, to be honest, you know, it could be good, and then it means that you have your Crypt Ghouls for holding your objective, your flares for being the basically the spearhead into the army, and then the Crypt Horrors are just being, you know, the huge sledgehammer just to break the enemy's horde units. It could work. You could find a good way here, and especially, like I say, 70 points is not a lot of points at all, especially how you're getting that extra, you know, artifact, and you're making your army easier to drop. So let's actually have a look at the ability now. It only has 1, but for 70 points we can't argue. So the ability is Martial Excellence. Well drilled on parade and instilled with iron discipline to their deluded minds, at least, the Royal Mordents heed the bestial roars of their courtier without a moment's hesitation. In your hero phase, 1 unit in the Royal Mordents within 10 inches of a Vargolf courtier can immediately reform around one of its models. That model must stay where it is, but each other model in the unit can move to 6 inches so long as it does not end the move within 3 inches of the enemy. This unit can still move in the ensuing movement phase as normal. So, of course, what this essentially lets you do is just reform. Now, like I say, it might not sound very exciting. However, what this means is that if you if the enemy is trying to bog you down in combat and you really need to get out of there and then try and get to another objective, and you really don't feel like you have the movement to get there, and you know, by you retreating out of combat, it's going to make trying to get to the objective a lot harder. Particularly, let's say you're bogged down in combat somewhere, and then the enemy's holding the objective somewhere else, and you need to get to that objective. Now, the only way you could have maybe get there is to move close towards the enemy unit, of course, and then charge into them, and use that 2d6 extra movement from charging to really get to the objective. However, if you're bogged down in combat, you would have to retreat. And if you retreat, you can't charge, which means you wouldn't be able to get that objective, and that could be the difference between winning and losing the game. However, with this, you can reform your units, so you might be able to reform in your hero phase to make sure everything's in range, to get you out of combat, to allow you to move normally later, and then complete your charge to be able to get that objective. So that's just one situation where this could be useful. Initially, you need to be within 10 inches of the Vargolf courtier. So it means if the enemy just wants to snipe him off straight away so you can't use his ability, they can do, but to be honest, because this ability is, it's okay, but because this battalion costs 70 points, they focus fire just to kill this Vargolf. The main thing they've done is just made it harder for your models to come back, essentially. And maybe they should have targeted more valuable units in your army. So, yeah, it's an extra ability. It's not the best, but, it is the cheapest, essentially. So, not bad. And like I say, if you've got a variety in your Flesh Eater Court army, because, there's nothing wrong with having variety, if you really like the models, yeah, have whatever models you want, absolutely. And if that is the case, this just means that you've got a battalion for your army, which can be really nice. So the Vall Mordents, for its points, only 70 points, you can't really fault it. So, the next battalion, the Royal and Majorie. Now, this basically consists of all the big nasties the Flesh Eater Courts have to offer. So, tattered wings beat the air, gigantic shadows fill the skies, and a dread chill washes over the land as the abhorrent Ghoul King orders its menagerie of undead dragons and monstrous bats into battle. So, organisation. A Royal Majorie consists of the following units. 3 or more units chosen in any combination from the following list: Terrorgeist and Zombie Dragon. Right, okay, so you can probably tell that this is going to be quite a fun battalion. I don't know how competitive it's going to be, because I have not personally used it. However, I would not really want to fight it, because even not looking at the abilities, just 3 big monsters is quite scary to look down upon. But, if you're the Flesh Eater Court player and you really want to have a battalion just of monsters, here you go, essentially. It costs 110 points, which isn't too expensive either, which, is good, considering how expensive these goddamn zombie dragons and terrorgeists are going to cost you in points and money. So, let's have a look at the abilities. Forward, my pretties. At the Master's command, vast wings are unfolded, as the monstrous beasts of the Royal Majorie take to the skies in search of fresh prey. If your general is an abhorrent Ghoul King, then in your hero phase you can make a 6-inch move with any models from a Royal Menagerie that are within 15 inches of him. They can still move in the assurance movement phase as normal. Okay, so being able to make your guys move 15 inches extra, bear in mind if they're all in range of each other, of course, and they move 14 inches as well, and they can move as normal in the movement phase, that is really quite fast, I think. If you get the first turn, and you really want to get these into your opponent's face, turn 1, I think the question will be is if you're going to fail a 3-inch charge. I think that's all you need to really worry about. So yeah, this makes these goddamn fast. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, when I talk about monsters, I say, don't charge them into the enemy unsupported on most cases. But on this case, might be the exception, as if you're charging all 3 of these bastards into the enemy, unless you're charging them into, monster killers, and, God forbid you fight a bloody Bone Splitter army with this battalion, I think they're going to struggle to deal with it. Especially how, obviously, you'll be picking with one of those monsters to attack with first, if this was your turn and charge them. So yeah, not a bad ability, and Forward, my pretties, is a fantastic name for it. So, looking good so far. However, unless you're trying to get that that turn 1 charge, and I do always say that movement is so important in Age of Sigmar. However, making your monsters be able to move that far, it's not bad. It's good, obviously, but I just don't know how much its uses are going to be, unless you're trying to, screen your important units with these monsters, or trying to, in the Duality of Death, I believe it's called, the battalion for the battle plan for match play. Where you capture the objectives with your heroes or monsters. This could be useful for that, I suppose. So, anyway, so that's the first ability. The next ability, Monstrous Assemble. When massed together, the creatures of the Royal Majorie gain mutual benefits from the dark energies coursing through their vast bodies. Models from the Royal Majorie that are within 5 inches of any other model from the Royal Majorie heal 1 wound in your hero phase, in addition to any other wounds that they heal. Okay, so yeah, it's alright, it makes them more survivable. I mean, the only ones that heal normally, as far as I'm aware, are the Terrorgeists, because if they're within 5 inches of an outpoint Ghoul King, they feast off his dark energy and heal D3 wounds in your hero phase. The Zombie Dragons would heal wounds if you could put a Ghoul King on them. However, as the battalion states, you need 3 or more units chosen from any combination from below, being Terrorgeist and Zombie Dragon, and they're not keyworded, these words, so they actually have to be the Zombie Dragon or the Terrorgeist model. If the word was written in a blocked font, it would initiate that as a keyword, meaning you could have the apparent Ghoul King on a Zombie Dragon because it shares the same keyword. That's not the case. This is referring to the War Scrolls of a single Terrorgeist and a Zombie Dragon. So the only ones that will be healing from this are the Terrorgeists. Sorry, I mean, they would all be healing from this, but the only ones that would heal from additional ways would be your Terrorgeists for being within 5 inches of an abhorrent Ghoul King in your hero phase. So, but, being able to heal 1 wound is good, especially if you can't heal normally for the Zombie Dragons, and just makes them more survivable. And for big nasty monsters like that, making them more survivable, especially if you're planning on doing alpha strikes with them, obviously just makes them a lot better. It means they're going to be in the game for longer. So, yeah, that's okay. I mean, they get to have a huge movement bonus to them as long as they're all in range of the ability. And then they get to heal 1 wound in your hero phase. So if they're within 5 inches of any other model from the same battalion. So it's okay. Personally, I mean, I haven't taken this. I probably will take it at some point just because it's fun and I have that many Zombie Dragons and Terrorgeists. And I actually have 4, so they would all be able to go in it, so that would be nice. But however, I don't see this being particularly game changing. I mean, yeah, if you get charged by 3 or more Zombie Dragons and Terrorgeists turn 1, how are you going to deal with it? You're going to struggle, admittedly, but they're not great for for the majority of objective holding and taking, and they can clear a lot of enemies off objectives. So they might be good. I just haven't taken it. All I can say is that for competitive games, I don't feel like monsters need an army needs a monster necessarily. I think they can do just fine without it. Obviously, depending on the army, but so I think the battalion could have its uses. Like I said, it only costs 110 points, so not a lot of points, apart from all the monsters that are going to cost a lot of points. So I think this battalion is usable. Definitely. I just don't know how many, how useful it can be to your army, essentially. But, it's a fun battalion full of undead monstrosities. Now, on to the last and final battalion there is, and in my opinion, also the most silly. The Flesh Eater Court is the actual name of the battalion. And the story behind it is a replenishment procession of mad, ragged wretches. The Flesh Eater Court marches to war. At its head stands the abhorrent Ghoul King in all his stark majesty, his subjects crouched at his feet. So the idea behind this, it's good. It's just the only reason why I say it's silly is because there's only going to be very, 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 very few games that are ever going to see this battalion in play. But I suppose if you can do it, if you can, have the time and the place to be able to play a game of this magnitude, fair play, and it'll probably be quite fun. So I'll get to why it's going to be such a big game needed to play this battalion, because the battalion is going to be so big, your army needs to be huge. So, the organisation. So a Flesh Eater Court consists of the following War Scroll battalions. The Royal Family, so one Royal Family, one Attendant at Court, one Dead Watch, one Abattoir, one Ghoul Patrol, one King's Ghouls, one Vall Mordents, and one Royal Majorie. I think it's Royal Majorie. I've just been saying its name again and again, and to be honest, I can't say that word again. So, Royal Majorie, it was something like that. Go back a few minutes, and I've probably said it about 5 times. Okay, so starting off. The good thing about this list here, about what battalions you need, the best part of it is it actually shows how many battalions the Flesh Eater Courts have got, and you realise actually we've got quite a lot. Admittedly, some of them are quite narrative based. But, we've got plenty to choose from. So that's the best thing about it. And then the second bit, which is maybe not quite as good, is you realise how much all of that is going to cost in points. Like, even if you did the minimum points cost, I'm not going to tell you what it is off the top of my head, but if you did the minimum points cost for each one of those battalions, it's going to take you easily over 2,000 points. And then, so 2,000 points is what the norm is for most games. For most big games, it's 2,000 points. So you're already going to need to have a sort of a special game to be able to have an army that's more than 2,000 points. And when that's just the basic battalion by itself, for all the... how many battalions are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. For all 8 of those battalions, it's going to be way over 2,000 points, just in that. And then, obviously, to maximise those battalions, to make the most out of them, it's going to be like double or triple the cost. And then... as the cherry on top, the Flesh Eater Court battalion costs 120 points. It isn't too bad actually. So fair play. 120 points for this huge fuck off battalion is not too bad. It's just how much the battalion point costs are for everything else. But anyway, with that little rant aside, let's go on to the abilities. On the march, when a Flesh Eater Court marches forth from its lair, any who oppose them will find themselves assailed at great speed by a tide of ferocious cannibals. All units from the Flesh Eater Court, including any new Flesh Eater Courts, units that are summoned by models from the Flesh Eater Court, can make a move in your hero phase, as if it were the movement phase. They can still move in the ensuring movement phase as normal. Okay, so that is a good rule. I just wish it was in a battalion that was actually usable in most games and usable in any tournaments. I would love it if that ability was there, but unfortunately it's only for the one-off huge games you might have once a year if you have the space, time, and models for it. And what this could mean is that as you have to take the... don't want to say the name of the battalion again, so I'll say it anyway. The one Royal, what was it? Fucking Managents? I think it wasn't even that. It was the one where you take all the dragons, basically. The Dragon Battalion and Terrorgeist one. So if you take that one, apologies about the name. I don't know why I can't remember. I just can't. So you take that battalion. Like I said, if all the units within range needed to be could make the extra 15-inch move, and then they move 14 inches in their movement phase anyway. With On the March ability from this battalion, they'll be making a 15-inch move in the hero phase, and then a 14-inch move in the hero phase, and then a 14-inch move in the movement phase, which is just absolutely insane. You're talking about, 43-inch movement plus charging? And if you don't want to charge, you can run. So You know, without charging, you could move a maximum of 49 inches, which is just insane for those huge big beasties. So it would be really good fun for that. So, you know, that is a good ability on the march. Like I said, I just wish it was in a more usable battalion, shall we say. And then it has one other ability called Dark Master. The Abhorrent King can summon forth minions and psychopaths from across his dominion at will. If the general is an abhorrent Ghoul King from this battalion, he knows all command abilities found on the Flesh Eater Court, War Scrolls and Battalions, including the Flesh Eater Court, and can use up to 3 different command abilities each turn. Okay, so this is really good if you just want to bring loads of models onto the table, because he will know all the command abilities from the Battalions and the War Scrolls. So that will mean that he will know how to summon a Courtier onto the board, he will know how to summon Crypt Horrors or Crypt Flares onto the board, and he'll know how to summon Crypt Ghouls onto the board, and also Abhorrent Ghoul Kings as well, as that was part of the Royal Family Battalion. So yeah, I mean, if you're having a huge game anyway, you're probably not even worrying about what the point total is. I mean, I'm soon to have a huge game as well on the 24th of February. I'm going to have a big game which I'll tell you about later, closer towards the time. But for a big game of this Flesh Eater Court, you're probably not worrying about point cost too much for your opponent. It's more just like a really big fun game you're going to have. So your opponent is probably going to allow you to bring on more models onto the table to make the game go on for even longer. But just to get the sort of the whole narrative and the whole fluff, I don't know. If you outnumber your opponent with your Flesh Eater Court army and you keep bringing models on, maybe they have to defend an area for 6 turns or something, you know. Make a story behind it, and that will make the battle plan as well. So being able to call on lots of different units, like I say, if you're playing match play points, you know, I personally, unless it's a really good ability, it's not my cup of tea. However, with this, like I say, you're probably not worrying about points, so bringing on more models, you know, really nice and fun. And then, you know, because you can use 3 different command abilities, so being able to do Inspiring Presence as well, and then summon a couple of things on, could be really good. So that is the Flesh Eater Court Battalion, and that ends our look at all the Flesh Eater Court Battalions. This is quite a long video, this one. It's gone on for quite a while, but I hope it's given you a fairly in-depth look at the battalions and a sort of feel, and you know, at least just gives you my opinions on them, as I have ran Flesh Eater Courts since they've came out. So I hope this has given you, like I say, some information, and if you're looking to build one of these battalions, I hope it's helped you there. If you have any other questions about a specific battalion within the ones I've just talked about, go ahead, put it down in the comments. I'll be happy to answer your questions and help you as best I can. So if you've enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe and comment down below and tell me your thoughts of Flesh Eater Courts and your experiences with them, as liking, subscribing and commenting does really help me produce more videos, and does really help motivate me to try and get one video out every day. So I thank you very much for watching, and until next time, remember, Nagash is all and all is one in Nagash.